Settle into a quiet window seat on the Cascades line, with rain tracing the glass and soft rail rhythm under you. This is a calm sleep story for adults, told with gentle, steady narration to help you unwind and drift toward rest. The train waits under the shelter of the platform roof, long and quiet, lights glowing softly against the wet dark. You step up from the damp concrete into the narrow doorway, and the air changes at once. Outside, the night is cool and raw, rain turning the evergreens into deep, blurred shapes. In here, the temperature is steady and kind, made for resting rather than rushing. You walk a few steps down the aisle, letting your pace slow to match the hush of the car. Overhead, the luggage racks hold a scattering of bags and jackets, everything already settled in for the ride. Small reading lights make little pools of gold above some seats, but most are off, so the ceiling feels low and gentle. Far ahead, a door opens and closes with a padded thunk, more like someone exhaling than anything mechanical. Your seat waits by the window, and when you ease into it, the cushion gives just enough under your weight. The fabric under your hands has a faint texture, a pattern you don't need to see clearly to recognize. The armrests are padded, edges rounded, nothing sharp or demanding. Beside you, the window is a tall rectangle of cool glass, already beaded with rain. Droplets chase each other in slow trails, catching the glow from the platform lights as they slide down. For a moment, you just sit and let yourself arrive. Your bag can rest by your feet instead of on your shoulder. The strap loosens from your hand and slumps to the floor, no longer asking to be carried. Your coat can lie across your lap or tuck between you and the seatback. Your phone can stay deep in a pocket or in the bag, screen dark, not in charge of anything right now. If you like, you can take a slow breath in through your nose, feeling the coolness at the tip, and then let it drift out gently through your mouth. There's no need to count or get it perfect. Just notice how your shoulders follow the breath down, dropping a little from where they've been riding all day. One simple breath, in and out, is enough to tell your body that the busy part is over for a while. You lean back and feel how the seat supports the length of your spine. The headrest meets the back of your skull in the right place, ready to hold you when you finally let your neck relax. Beneath your shoes, the floor is solid, with just a hint of cushion under the carpet. Even before the train moves, there's a sense of being held in place, ready to be carried. Your friend settles into the seat beside you, the familiar rustle of their jacket a soft sound in the dim car. They don't need many words with you. A small, tired smile, the way they drop their bag and stretch their legs out, the quiet sigh as they lean back, these say enough. This is someone you can be quiet with, someone who doesn't need you to be interesting or energetic tonight. Outside the window, the platform glows in puddled light. A worker in a reflective vest walks along the edge of the train, checking something with an easy, practiced motion. The yellow safety line along the concrete shines more brightly where it's wet. Headlights from a car in the parking lot make a soft smear on the pavement before slipping away. A muted announcement comes through the overhead speakers, words softened by distance and fabric. You catch the name of a city and the mention of the Cascades line, but you don't need to hold on to the details. The important part is simple. You're on the right train, and it's going to take you exactly where it promised. You don't have to steer. You don't have to watch the road. You can let the route exist in the background while you rest. After a moment, if it feels good, you can take another easy breath. Let the air fill your chest just a bit more this time, and then let it slip out in a long, unhurried stream. Notice how the back of your legs rests more fully on the seat when you exhale, how your hands loosen a little in your lap. You don't need to fix anything with these breaths. They're just a gentle way of telling yourself, you can set things down now. You imagine, in a quiet corner of your mind, the simple comforts still ahead on this ride, a warm drink later from the cafe car, the steady rhythm of the rails once you're underway, the way the dark evergreens will slide past in the rain outside. All of that will come on its own. For now, your only job is to sit in this soft, numbered seat, feel the calm around you, and let the night begin to carry you. The train gives a small, testing shiver under your feet, a hint of the motion to come. The platform edge outside your window feels suddenly more like the starting line of a very gentle journey. You rest your hands on your thighs or fold them loosely together, lean your head back against the cushion, and let the first real sense of the evening settle in. You're here, you're off your feet, and from this point on, the rails will do the work while you let go. When the train finally eases out of the station, the movement is so smooth that, at first, you feel it more than you see it. There's a soft, growing hum under your feet, a mild press against your back as the car glides forward. The platform outside your window begins to drift past. Yellow line, damp concrete, stray reflections of overhead lights. The night beyond waits in long stretches of dark that the carriage windows turn into gentle mirrors. Outside, the air is a cool, wet breath in the high 30s, the kind of late December night that slicks pavement and deepens the greens of distant trees. Rain is steady but not harsh, a patient drizzle that darkens everything it touches. On the glass next to you, droplets gather, merge, and trail downward in slanting paths as the train picks up speed. Each streak briefly catches the glow of a platform lamp or a passing signal, then disappears into the blur. Inside, the car holds its own small climate, mild and sheltered. The air is warm enough that you don't think about your coat unless you want to use it as an extra layer. A faint current from the ceiling vents moves now and then across your forehead or hands, keeping the space from feeling stuffy. There's a trace of fammy, lyre smells mixed together, clean fabric, a hint of coffee from somewhere a few cars away, the faint dampness of wool and cotton drying after the walk through the station. Overhead, long strips of light run the length of the car, turned down just enough to feel like late evening rather than midday. They cast a soft, even glow over the aisle and the tops of the seats. Individual reading lights, where they're on, make little circles of brighter gold over open books and half-closed eyes. Most passengers have chosen dimness, letting the windows turn into shadowy mirrors. You look out and see your own outline faintly reflected there, your shoulders, your head resting on the cushioned seat, the soft shape of your friend beside you. Beyond that, the world slides past. At first, it's the backside of the station service doors, a loading dock, a row of vending machines glowing in the night. Then the view opens up to parking lots, rows of parked cars shimmering with water on their roofs, their hazard lights blinking in slow, patient rhythms. As the train leaves the immediate edge of the city, the scenery begins to stretch out. You pass low warehouses with metal siding, their walls catching the lights from the train. A lonely billboard stands by the tracks, colors muted in the rain, advertising something you don't need to care about. A few small streets cross the rails, their crossing gates already lifted, red lights dimming as you glide by. The silhouettes of evergreen trees gather along the edges of these spaces, dark and familiar. The soundscape settles into something steady and kind. The rails make a softened click as the wheels cross each joint, more like a muted heartbeat than a hard knock. The bass of the carriage hums in a quiet, continuous note, vibrating just enough for you to feel it in your feet and the back of your legs. Every now and then, when the train curves, that hum deepens for a moment and then rises again, as if it were breathing along with you. Overhead speakers carry the occasional announcement. Words low and rounded by distance. You catch the names of towns, the mention of a schedule, a reminder about quiet hours later in the night. The voice is calm and practiced, never hurried. It doesn't pull you out of your seat. It just offers information to anyone who needs it, then fades back into the general hush. You notice the small, distinctly American details sprinkled through the car. A safety card sits in the pocket on the seatback in front of you, laminated and slightly bent at the corners. A power outlet near your knees glows with a tiny indicator light, ready for charging cables that may or may not come out tonight. Overhead, the luggage racks are simple metal frames with straps, built to hold duffel bags, backpacks, and the occasional hard-sided suitcase that has seen many trips like this one. Far down the aisle, a person in a dark vest and name badge moves quietly, checking something with an easy, practiced rhythm. Their shoes make soft sounds on the carpeted floor, more of a whisper than a step. They pause here and there to answer a question or point to an empty seat, always in a low voice that barely rises above the rail sounds. This is their workspace, but at this hour, it feels more like a place of caretaking than of duty. As the train finds its cruising speed, the outside world becomes a continuous scroll of night. You see patches of roadside businesses, their signs shining over near empty parking lots. A gas station canopy glows in the distance, pumps sitting idle under its bright roof. Then, just as quickly, these fade into long stretches of darkness broken only by the occasional porch light on a far-off house, or the steady lamps along a highway that runs parallel to the tracks. You know, somewhere along this line, there is water, a sound, or a river that the train will trace for a while. You imagine it now as a broad, dark mirror beyond the trees, catching reflections of scattered lights along its banks. Even if you can't see, don't clearly through the rain, the idea of it is enough. A quiet body of water moving in its own slow way while you are carried above it. Inside the car, the mood has settled. A few people murmur to each other in low tones, voices softened by distance and fabric. Someone a row or two ahead adjusts a blanket over their lap. A zipper closes slowly. A book is folded shut with a gentle thump, its reader leaning back at last. None of it feels disruptive. It's all part of the background, small signs of other lives unwinding alongside your own. You slide your hand into the seatback pocket and feel the edges of a few items there. Magazines, another safety card, a folded leaflet, ordinary things, waiting to be used later if you want them. For now, you let them be, content just to know they're within reach. Your focus drifts back to the feel of the seat, the warmth of the air, the mild coolness of the window against your shoulder. The rain keeps writing its narrow lines down the glass. The train keeps humming softly along the tracks. Between your own breathing and the rhythm of the rails, a pattern begins to form, calm and predictable. This is the setting for the rest of the night, a moving room in the northwest, held in a band of wet, winter air, sliding through evergreens and small towns, while you sit back, settle in, and let the journey gently carry you toward rest. The rhythm of the rails settles into the background, steady and kind, and your attention drifts closer to the small territory of your own body. You feel, first, the way the seat holds you. The cushion doesn't push back or swallow you. It just gives a little under your weight, rising around the curve of your hips and thighs, so you're cradled instead of perched. The fabric beneath your palms is tightly woven, almost velvety if you move your fingers slowly enough, with a tiny pattern you can sense more than see. Your shoulders realize, gradually, that they're allowed to let go. All day they've been lifted, just a little, as if bracing for the next thing. Now, with the gentle pull of the train easing you forward, They drop down the back of your rib cage. The collar of your shirt shifts as they do, letting a faint strand of mild air slide along the side of your neck. The muscles at the base of your skull unclench by degrees, like a fist opening without anyone watching. You notice your hands, resting without expectation. One lies on your thigh, fingers soft and slightly curled, feeling the warmth of your own leg through the fabric. The other rests on the armrest between you and your friend, knuckles loose, thumb brushing now and then against the padded edge when the car sways. The skin on the back of your hands feels the slight variation in temperature between the aisle and the window side, a subtle coolness where the glass breathes the outside night in, a gentle warmth closer to the center of the car. If you want to, you can take another easy breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, using your hands as quiet markers. As you inhale, notice the way the hand on your thigh rises just enough to tell you your lungs are filling. As you exhale, feel it sink again, the weight of your palm growing a little heavier. You don't have to make it slow or deep on purpose. It will find its own pace if you simply watch it for a moment. Your feet have their own conversation with the train. Inside your shoes, toes can spread out now that they're no longer carrying you from place to place. The soles feel the low hum of the rails through a thin layer of carpet and flooring. When the train curves, your weight rocks from the inside edge of one foot to the other, a small, predictable sway that your ankles answer without effort. It's a motion you don't have to manage. Your body knows how to ride it. The fabric against your skin makes a quiet map of comfort. The softness of your socks around your ankles, the stretch of your pants at your knees when you shift, the familiar feel of your shirt under your jacket, layers holding your warmth in while the climate of the car stays steady. Even the seat belt, if you've fastened it low across your lap, is padded and gentle, a light band you barely remember once it's in place. Beside you, your friend has found their own version of stillness. Their elbow rests lightly against the shared armrest, close enough that, every so often, the two of you touch without meaning to. It's the smallest contact, just a brush of sleeves or the hint of a bump when the car leans, and yet it carries a lot. It says, "You're not alone on this stretch of night. Someone else is here, relaxing in the same rhythm, asking nothing from you." You hear the soft whisper of fabric as they adjust their position, maybe crossing an ankle over the other or tucking one foot back a little. Their head leans into the cushion behind them, and the movement makes a faint creak in the seatback, more felt than heard. Without needing to look, you know they're settling in, matching the pace you've begun to keep. Your attention drifts to the simple objects within reach. The armrest curves gently under your forearm, the plastic underneath the upholstery smooth and cool where it peeks through. The small latch for the tray table brushes your knuckles when you explore the edge of the seat back in front of you. It has a tiny bit of texture, just enough to catch your fingertips. You press it once, feel the mechanism move under the panel, and let your hand drop again without opening anything yet. There's no need to unfold the world in front of you right away. If you shift your shoulder closer to the window, the glass meets you with a band of coolness. It's not icy, just noticeably chill against the warmth you've been storing all day. Condensation has gathered along the lower edge where the inside air meets the outside cold. When your breath moves across it, a faint fog blooms on the surface and then fades, leaving a brief, private trace of your presence there. The faint vibration of the train runs through the frame of the window, then into the side of your upper arm when you lean against it. It's subtle, like a distant purr, almost easier to sense with your bones than with your ears. Underneath it all, the rails send up their softened click as the wheels roll over the joints. The sound is rounded, with no hard edges, repeating often enough that your nervous system starts to treat it as part of the backdrop of rest. You become aware of the inside of your mouth, too, how your jaw sits when it's not clenched, how your tongue has room to rest. You notice that your teeth aren't pressing together as tightly as they sometimes do, and that your lips have loosened into a neutral, easy line. The muscles around your eyes soften, even with them open, as if the dim light and the steady blur outside have convinced them there's nothing here they need to sharpen themselves for. The simple weight of your body feels different now than when you first sat down. At the beginning, you were almost hovering, ready to get back up if needed. Now you're really in the seat, shoulders supported, lower back nestled into the curve, legs at an angle that doesn't ask much from your knees. There's a sense of being nested inside 3 layers at once, the seat holding you, the car holding the seat, and the moving night holding the car. Your friend turns their head slightly, and you feel the faint disturbance of air as they do. They might murmur something small and friendly, or they might say nothing at all. Either way, their presence is another gentle layer pressing you toward rest, like a blanket laid over a blanket. You don't have to perform or explain or plan. You just have to be here, in this body, on this moving patch of floor, letting the quiet details of touch and weight guide you deeper into ease. After a long, easy stretch of sitting, you feel a simple urge to move, not because anything is wrong, but because your muscles would enjoy a small change. You unbuckle if you've fastened the belt, feeling the soft release across your lap. Your hands press briefly on the armrests as you ease yourself up, and the cushion rises a little under you before returning to its original shape. Your knees straighten, joints answering with a quiet, grateful stretch. Standing in the aisle, the motion of the train becomes a little more noticeable. The floor under your socked feet has a gentle bounce now, absorbing each small shift in the rails. You rest one hand on the top of your seat, fingers wrapping around the upholstered edge. The fabric there feels firmer than the cushion, with a faint seam your thumb can follow. You begin to walk down the aisle at a slow, unhurried pace. Each step asks your ankles to sway along with the car, a tiny side-to-side adjustment that quickly finds its own rhythm. The overhead lights lay a soft path ahead of you, and the seats rise on either side like small, padded walls. As you pass each row, you catch glimpses of other little worlds, a blanket pulled up to someone's chin, a paperback loosely held in a hand that's almost asleep, a hoodie bunched into a makeshift pillow. Here and there, a curtain over a window has been tugged partly closed, its fabric hanging still despite the train's movement. Overhead racks hold duffel bags and coats, straps resting in easy curves. The air feels faintly cooler in the aisle than it did in your seat, but the difference is mild, like walking from one cozy room to another nearby. At the end of the car, you pause by the door that leads to the next coach. In the small window set into the door, you see the faint reflection of your own face overlaid on the next aisle. Beyond it, more seats, more dim lights, more quiet passengers. Above the doorframe, a small digital clock glows with pale numbers, keeping its own patient record of the hours. For a moment, you simply watch the seconds change, one neat increment, then another, each shift making almost no sound at all. It's a gentle, precise pause, time moving, but not asking you to move with it. You turn back toward your seat, hand sliding along the wall for a few steps. The smooth paneling beneath your palm is cool and steady. As you walk, the car leans into a curve, and you feel your body answer without thought, leaning just enough in the opposite direction to keep balance. The faint hum of the rails rises slightly, then settles again as the train straightens. When you reach your row, you don't sit right away. Instead, you let your gaze drift over the small fixtures nearby. There's a narrow ledge along the wall near your shoulder, just big enough for a drink or a folded card. Its edge is slightly rounded, the surface cool under your fingertips when you test it. Nearby, at the back of the seat in front of you, the pocket bulges a little with the shapes of whatever has been tucked there: a few thin magazines, a safety card, a folded sheet of paper. You slide your fingers into the pocket and draw out that folded sheet. It's a timetable, printed on thin paper that rustles softly as it unfolds. The creases are crisp, but the edges are already a little softened by use. Under the dim metal of the overhead lights, the grid of times and station names stretches across the page in tidy rows. You don't need to study it right now. The train already knows this route. Still, there's something quietly reassuring about seeing the line laid out in ink, each stop a small promise kept. You let your fingertip trace along one of the lines, feeling the faint ridge where the ink sits on the paper. The sheet is cool but not cold in your hands, warmed quickly by your touch. After a moment, you refold it carefully, following the existing creases so the corners line up. The motion is slow and precise, a tiny act of order in this moving room. From your pocket, you bring out your ticket as well, the small stub that got you on board. The paper is thicker than the timetable, with a slight gloss on one side. The date printed there has already begun to look a touch worn, as if it has rubbed against fabric or the inside of your hand a few times. The ink isn't sharp and new anymore. It's gently faded, softened at the edges. You turn the stub over once between your fingers, feeling the torn edge where it was separated from the rest. It's a modest little object, light enough to forget about, yet it represents the whole decision to be here on this night, in this car, on this particular line. You don't think about that too hard. You just notice the way it feels to hold it now that you're well underway. With timetable and ticket stub in hand, you look around for a place to let them rest. The narrow ledge by your seat seems just right. You set the stub there first, easing its bottom edge into a slim groove where the wall meets the small shelf. It stands at a slight angle, leaning back a little, steady despite the train's motion. Then you slide the folded timetable into the seatback pocket in front of you, tucking it in front of the magazines so it's easy to find later. For a moment after you've placed them, you simply stand in the aisle, one hand lightly on the top of your seat, and listen. The rails keep their softened rhythm. The rain continues, its quiet work on the window. Somewhere down the car, you hear the gentle click of that small digital clock changing its minute, a tiny, precise sound almost swallowed by the hum. It feels like a shared breath between you and the train, a pause in which nothing is required. You ease yourself back into your seat, feeling the cushion welcome you again. Your friend shifts just enough to make room, offering a sleepy smile that doesn't need words. You settle your hands in your lap, feeling the familiar textures of your clothes, the steady support of the seat back, the mild coolness near the window. Now, if you want to glance around, you know where things are. The ticket stub with its gently faded date leans calmly on the little ledge. The folded timetable rests in the pocket, quietly keeping its grid of times. The magazines wait behind it, unsorted for now, their spines forming an easy, irregular row. Everything in this small corner of the car has its place, and none of it asks for your attention unless you choose to give it. The train continues to glide through the wet winter night, and you, anchored by these simple objects and the feel of the seat beneath you, begin to let your awareness drift inward again, ready for the next. even softer layer of rest. The train settles deeper into its night rhythm, and in the small pool of light around your seat, everything feels unhurried and clear. Your eyes drift to the pocket on the seatback in front of you, where the folded timetable sits in front of a few thin magazines. The paper edges make a slightly uneven line under the fabric, a quiet hint that there is a little patch of clutter waiting if you ever feel like tending to it. The feeling comes in its own time, gentle and without pressure. You reach forward and slip your hand into the pocket, fingers brushing along glossy covers stacked one against another. The magazines slide out with a soft rustle, fanning a little in your hands. The paper is cool at first, then warms to your touch as you draw the stack onto the tray table in front of you and let them settle in a loose pile. Covers show muted images under the dim light landscapes, faces, the kind of everyday scenes you might find in waiting rooms and coffee shops. The colors are softened by the low glow, more suggestion than brightness. You can feel the slight bend of each issue as you pick it up, the spine giving a little, pages whispering against each other. Your friend watches with eyes half closed, a faint smile resting at the edge of their mouth, content to let you move at your own pace. You slide the first magazine toward you and look for the small date printed near the spine. The numbers are neat and compact. You speak them softly in your head, not as something to memorize, but as a simple fact. This one belongs earlier or later. You set it down near the left side of the tray. The next issue shows a different month, a different year. You place that one a little to the right. Bit by bit, a loose order begins to appear. There is no urgency in it. If the train were to stop or the lights were to dim completely, nothing about your world would fall apart because the magazines were not sorted. This is not the kind of task that presses. It simply offers itself, and you accept, not to accomplish something important, but to give your hands and eyes a kindly, harmless pattern to follow while the rails carry you forward. You keep going, lifting each issue just enough to find the small print that tells you when it was put into the world. Some covers feel a bit smoother, newer under your fingertips. Others have softened with time and handling, corners rounded, pages slightly relaxed. You line them up along the tray, left to right, earliest to most recent, watching the dates climb quietly in order. Your friend leans a little closer, a low sound of interest humming in their throat. Without needing to be asked, they pick up one of the magazines near the middle of your growing row and tilt it toward the dim light to find its date. Their thumb leaves a slight warmth along the spine before they place it back exactly where it belongs in the sequence. The two of you fall into an easy, shared rhythm, no words needed, only the soft exchange of paper and glances. Now and then the train leans through a gentle curve, and the row of magazines shifts a fraction of an inch. You steady them with a flat palm, feeling the layered thickness of pages beneath your hand. The motion pauses, then eases, and they stay where you've guided them. You use the side of your index finger to nudge a crooked spine into line with the others, making the row just a little straighter, a little calmer. A couple of thin leaflets emerge from the pocket as well, lighter and more flexible than the magazines. You stack them together off to one side, aligning their corners with a small, careful tap, then slide them to the back of the tray so they don't interrupt the simple progression of dates. They will find their place later. For now, they can rest as a quiet little bundle, part of the order but not the focus of it. As the row of issues takes shape, you see a slow shift in the images along the spines. Colors deepen or fade, fonts change slightly, Small details move from one style to another. None of it asks to be analyzed. It's just a visual way of knowing that time has passed, that someone slid these into the pocket one after another over weeks and months, and now, for this brief stretch of night, they are in your care. Through all of this, the anchors you set earlier remain in the edges of your awareness. The folded timetable rests in the pocket, its creases holding steady. The little ticket stub leans on the ledge by your shoulder, a quiet shape in the corner of your eye. They keep their gentle places while you work with the stack of pages in front of you, not demanding attention, simply existing as part of the small, familiar landscape of your seat. When you finally reach the last magazine, you feel the slight satisfaction of seeing the whole line stretched out from left to right. There is a simple comfort in it. No files, no screens, no deadlines, just a row of dates that now make gentle sense. You let your hands rest for a moment on either side of the tray, palms open, feeling the faint vibration of the train through the plastic surface. You take a moment to simply look along the row, letting your eyes move slowly from one spine to the next. The neat sequence is modest but satisfying, like a tiny bookshelf you have straightened in a quiet room. Nothing important has changed, yet the space feels kinder, a little more your own. You could go further, flip through each issue, match sections, straighten every corner until everything is perfect. Instead, you stop at enough. The magazines are stacked by date now, early to late. The leaflets are gathered. Your friend has seen the order take shape, and you have felt the small, pleasing weight of paper in your hands. That is all this moment needs. With a soft exhale, you draw the row a little closer to the center of the tray so it sits securely, away from the edge. Your friend's hand comes to rest near yours, fingers touching lightly. The two of you sit back together, letting the glow from above fall gently over this tiny, tidy archive on the table. Outside, the rain keeps its quiet work on the window, and inside, your mind, like the stack of magazines, feels just a bit more sorted, a bit more ready to loosen and drift. After a while, the little row of magazines no longer needs your attention. Their tidy order rests on the tray, and in the quiet that follows, another, softer wish rises up, to have something warm in your hands, something gentle and sweet to end the day. The idea of cocoa drifts in like the memory of a light over a kitchen sink, left on so you can find your way to bed. You brush your friend's sleeve with your fingertips. A small question. They open their eyes just enough to see you, then give a drowsy nod. With that permission, you ease out of your seat, feeling the cushion rise behind you as you stand. The aisle sways under your feet, but your body has learned the rhythm by now. As you walk toward the front of the car, you pass the little ticket stub on the ledge and the folded timetable in the pocket, still exactly where you left them. At the end of the coach, the door slides open with a padded sound, and you step into a slightly brighter space. A short corridor leads to a small service counter where smooth surfaces and compact shelves catch the overhead light. The air smells faintly of coffee and hot water, with a mild sweetness underneath. It feels a little like steppy, NG, into the working side of a home kitchen at night, the place where the kettle lives, where mugs are stacked within easy reach. On the counter, paper cups nest inside one another in a neat column. A clear container holds wooden stir sticks upright, their pale tops lined up tidily. Nearby, a low tray keeps single-serve packets of hot chocolate mix arranged in a row. You pick one up. It is light and flexible between your fingers, the powder inside shifting with a soft, muffled slide. You take a cup from the stack and set it down. It is almost weightless. A small shake settles the cocoa to one end of its packet. You tear across the top with a slow, careful pull, the paper yielding in a quiet rip. As you tip the opening over the cup, the powder pours out in a thin stream, forming a small, dark mound at the bottom. For a moment it sits there, dry and still, waiting. The hot water dispenser hums gently beside you, a low, steady sound. When you press the lever, a clear stream flows into the cup, striking the cocoa and sending up a fuller scent. Steam curls upward in soft, wandering ribbons. The smell is immediately comforting, sweet, familiar, carrying the simplest sense of chocolate and warmth. You stop before the cup is full, then wrap both hands around it, feeling heat gather slowly through the paper into your palms. You slip a wooden stir stick into the cup and trace slow circles through the mixture. The tiny sound of wood against paper and liquid is easy to hear in this small space. With every turn, the drink darkens and smooths until no flecks of powder remain. When it looks even and deep in color, you tap the stick gently on the inside of the cup and lay it on a napkin. Cradling the cup, you turn back toward your car. The floor sways in a way your feet now expect, and the surface of the cocoa rocks with each step. You hold it steady between your hands as you pass through the sliding door into the dimmer coach, where most reading lights are already off and shapes are settled into stillness. The sounds here are soft and blended. The rail's low song, the faint sigh of air through vents, the occasional, distant shift of fabric. You slip back into your seat, the cushion reshaping beneath you, and your friend moves just enough to make space. For a moment, you simply hold the cup below your face and breathe, letting the steam brush your skin. Then, when it feels right, you take a small sip. The warmth moves from your tongue down into your chest in a slow, easy line. The flavor is simple and familiar, the kind of cocoa that tastes like quiet evenings in small kitchens and late nights when someone quietly set a mug in front of you. You rest the cup in a holder near your knee. Your friend's fingers brush yours as they lift it next. They taste and sigh, a low, contented sound that folds neatly into the murmur of the train. Without hurry, you pass the drink back and forth a few times. Each sip is a little cooler than the last, but the warmth it leaves behind gathers in your hands, your shoulders, the middle of your body, making the surrounding air feel even kinder. When the cocoa is gone, the cup is only gently warm. You tuck the used stir stick and napkin inside, then set it back into its holder. A faint chocolate scent lingers around your seat. You let your hands rest loosely in your lap and feel the comfortable weight of your legs under the scarf or jacket across them. Outside, the rain keeps it steady, tracing down the window. Inside, wrapped in mild air, the memory of steam, and that first sweet sip, you drift another quiet step closer to sleep. The last of the cocoa warmth settles in your chest, and the empty cup rests in its holder, light as paper, done with its task for the night. The magazines sit in their quiet, orderly row on the tray, the dates marching gently from left to right. Around you, the car has grown even calmer. A few more reading lights have clicked off, leaving only small pockets of gold scattered along the aisle. Your friend shifts beside you, the fabric of their sleeve brushing your arm with the softest hiss. They glance at the magazines, then at you, their eyes half-lidded but clear enough to share a thought. Their voice, when it comes, is barely louder than the rail hum. "Looks good," they murmur, more breath than sound. nodding toward the neat stack. You let your head tip a little toward them, a small smile forming without effort. "It feels easier," you whisper back, "like the car is quieter on this side." They let out a tiny puff of air that might be a laugh if it weren't so close to a sigh. "It is," they answer, eyes already drifting toward the window again. "Everything's in its place now." You sit with that for a moment. Your hands rest palm down on your thighs, the weight of them comfortable, fingers loose. The seat cradles your back, and the window at your shoulder offers its cool, steady presence. Your feet press lightly into the floor, feeling each softened click of the rails as the train glides through the wet dark. Inside your head, thoughts move more slowly than they did earlier. They don't pile up. They arrive one at a time, as if the same quiet order you brought to the magazines has spread to your mind. You notice the pleasant heaviness in your legs, the way your spine feels lengthened and supported, the way your jaw rests without effort. "Not bad for a night's work," your friend whispers after a while, eyes still closed. One row of magazines and one cup of cocoa. You breathe out a small, almost soundless chuckle. "That's enough," you answer, keeping your voice low so it doesn't disturb anyone around you. "Feels like plenty." Another stretch of silence follows, but it's not empty. It's filled with soft sounds, the rail's muted song, the rain's even patter on the roof and windows, the quiet shifting of fabric as your friend readjusts their shoulders against the seat. A distant zipper closes somewhere in the car. A reading light clicks off with a tiny, precise tick. The space grows darker and gentler. Your gaze falls on the magazines again. Under the dim light, the spines are just shapes now, the dates more sensed than read. The little row of covers looks less like a task completed and more like a small, personal shelf, one that belongs to this seat, this night, this quiet stretch between towns. You feel your friend's hand hover near yours on the tray, not quite touching. Your fingers shift just enough that the backs of your hands meet. The contact is feather-light, a shared point of warmth in the mild air. No one says anything about it. It's simply there, steady and reassuring, a small signal that you can slip deeper into rest without losing your place beside them. Your thoughts begin to drift in shorter phrases now, more feeling than sentences. Warm cup, soft seat, rain outside, rails below, friend nearby, no rush. Nothing urgent, just this moving room and the quiet night wrapped around it. The pieces fit together easily. You tilt your head toward the window again. In the reflection, you see your own outline and the faint suggestion of your friend's profile next to you, both superimposed over the passing dark. The shapes outside trees, scattered lights, occasional road-crossing signals blur into streaks and constellations that require no interpretation. You don't try to identify anything. You simply let the images pass through your awareness, like clouds in a night sky. "Comfortable?" your friend asks softly, their voice touching the edge of your thoughts and then settling there. You nod, the motion small and slow. "Yeah," you breathe. "More than before." "Good," they answer. "That's the whole point of being here." You let that sentence linger. It feels true in a simple way. The point of being here tonight isn't to see every mile, or to count every town, or to make every minute productive. It's to be carried, to let the steady tracks take over the work of moving forward so your body and mind can pause. Your attention turns inward again. You notice how your breath has settled into a steady rhythm, like a quiet conversation with the rails. In, out, moving with the softened click and hum. If you listen closely, you can pick out the difference between the sound of the wheels on straight stretches and the slightly deeper tone when the train curves or crosses a bridge. Each change is gentle, rounded, predictable. You feel your eyelids grow heavier. They slip lower over your gaze, turning the world into dark shapes and soft glows. You don't have to fight it. This is exactly what this ride is for. You can let yourself hover near sleep while still feeling the warm line of your friend's shoulder beside you. The mild temperature of the car, the quiet presence of sorted magazines, and a finished cup of cocoa glowing faintly in your awareness. In this softened state, words come less and less. Little phrases float through your mind like leaves on slow water. Safe here, carried, nothing to do. You let them drift without holding them too tightly. The low whisper exchange with your friend has done its work. It has confirmed, in shared quiet, what your body already knew, that it's all right to release the day now and sink deeper into the gentle rhythm of the night train. The car has grown so still that even the smallest sound feels like a story. A distant murmur of someone settling in another row, the tiny, precise beep of a door panel as a crew member passes quietly through, the rain's steady brush on the window. You're not quite asleep, but you're not fully awake either. Your mind moves in soft loops, circling familiar shapes. Your attention drifts to the seatback pocket in front of you, where the folded timetable rests behind the sorted magazines. You can't see it, but you can picture it clearly. Creases following straight lines, neat columns of stations and times, a little map of the night laid out in numbers. The knowledge that it's there, doing its silent, orderly work, calls up another image from farther back. You remember standing in a station on a different evening, years ago, long before this ride. The air was cool in the same way, damp and late in the year, the kind that kept your hands buried in your pockets until you needed them. Overhead lights reflected on wet pavement outside the station windows, making the world look freshly washed. Someone had handed you a timetable then, too. The paper felt just like the one in front of you now, thin, a little stiff at the folds, full of numbers that lined up like beads on a string. You remember the quiet excitement of finding the name of your departure station and then sliding your finger across the row to see all the places that lay ahead. The idea that you could step aboard and be carried through all those names felt almost like a magic trick, but a gentle one, no surprises. Just a promise kept by rails and time. In that memory, you stand near a wide window, watching a train glide in under the station roof. Its windows glow against the early darkness, just as they do now when you look out at your reflection. People move in small, unhurried lines along the platform, some with backpacks, some with small rolling bags, some with only a single worn duffel. The smell of coffee from a kiosk nearby mixes with the scent of damp stone and metal. You recall the way you folded and unfolded that timetable over and over while you waited, not because you were worried, but because the pattern of it felt soothing. See the starting point, trace the line, find the end, repeat. You didn't know yet how the rails would feel under your feet, or how the gentle sway of the car would rock you hours later, but you knew that the paper in your hands connected you to all of it. Back in the present, You slide your fingertips along the outside of the seatback pocket. You can feel the faint ridge of the folded sheet against the fabric. It's the same, and not the same. The grid still exists, but now its background, the route already chosen, the stops already being passed in the dark while you rest. Where once the timetable was a guide, now it feels more like a quiet companion. Here, if you need it, content to be forgotten if you don't. Your thoughts wander to the small ticket stub standing on the ledge by your shoulder. You turn your head slightly and see it there, a pale strip in the dim light. Earlier, when you tucked it into the groove, the paper felt firmer, the printed date more distinct. Now, in your drowsy eyes, the stub looks softer. The edges have relaxed a little, leaning back more fully against the wall. The ink seems gentler from this angle, its lines less like commands and more like a record of something already underway. You remember another stub from another night pulled from a pocket at the end of a journey, creased from being handled, maybe smudged where a thumb had pressed over the date again and again. You can almost feel the echo of that slip now, the way it curled slightly, the way it ended up tucked into a book or between pages of a notebook for no particular reason other than that it felt nice not to throw it away yet. It wasn't a ticket anymore by then. It was just a small reminder that you had been carried somewhere. In your mind, the anchors of paper and ink from that earlier time merge gently with the ones beside you now. The timetable in the pocket, the stub on the ledge they've taken over the simple job of remembering where you are and where you're going, so you don't have to. The responsibility that once felt like it sat in your chest has been passed on, almost imperceptibly, to thin sheets and small rectangles that are content to hold it. Outside the window, the route unfolds in longer, quieter scenes. You catch, through the reflection, the faint outline of a river alongside the tracks, a darker ribbon among the trees, its surface catching smears of light from houses set back on the hills. You imagine how the timetable would mark this section with a single line and a few numbers. But here, half asleep, it becomes a slower picture. Water keeping its own pace, banks lined with tall evergreens whose branches bend under the weight of the rain. You sense a small town passing a cluster of lights gathered around a crossing, a few low buildings near the tracks. The glow from their windows reflects off the wet streets, and a crossing gate's red lights blink in a lazy rhythm as you go by. Somewhere, a porch lamp burns above a front door, casting a soft circle over a set of steps. These details slide past without asking for any story. They are simply there, part of the night that your ticket and timetable mean you are allowed to cross through without effort. Your friend shifts again, and their sleeve brushes yours. You feel the warmth of them like a steady point amid the moving scenery. A memory surfaces of another companion. On another trip, a person who traced routes on a map with one finger while you tried to match them to the names on your timetable. They laughed quietly when you mixed up two towns and then showed you how to read the chart without rushing. The moment was small, but it felt like a kind of kindness, being taught how to trust that the journey would make sense, step by step, without needing to see the entire map in your mind at once. That same feeling rests here now. You don't need to remember every stop between where you boarded and where you'll get off. The folded paper in the pocket has that covered. The ticket stub on the ledge holds the proof that you're meant to be here. Your job is simpler, to feel the sway of the car, to listen to the softened click of the rails, to let the images outside the window turn into soft, passing sketches instead of sharp, fixed photographs. You let your fingertips brush the edge of the tray where the magazines are lined up. Their dates, like the times on the timetable and the faded numbers on the stub, all point to the same quiet truth. Time is moving, but tonight you don't have to keep track of it. You can let papers and prints and tiny displays do that, while you sink deeper into warmth and motion. The memory of the earlier station, the older journey, the first time you traced a route on a timetable, these float together with the present scene of this car, this pocket, this stub on its ledge. Nothing about them feels heavy. They are gentle layers of reassurance, stacked like the magazines you sorted, reminding you that you have been carried before and will be carried again. With that thought, your body relaxes another degree. Your shoulders soften. Your head tips a little more comfortably against the seat. Your breath flows in and out in quiet, steady lines. Outside, the evergreens and river and small towns keep sliding past. Inside, the anchors of this night paper folded in a pocket, a small ticket leaning back at rest, keep their quiet watch while you drift further towards sleep, wrapped in the kind certainty that the rails will bring you where you need to go. The cocoa is gone, the cup settled gently back in its holder, and the magazines rest in their calm little row on the tray. The car around you has shifted another shade quieter. A few more reading lights have blinked off, leaving the aisle in a soft wash of dim gold. Outside the window, the night has become mostly suggestion, dark shapes, faint glows, the constant shimmer of rain on glass. You sit for a while, just breathing, enjoying the simple rightness of the neat line of spines in front of you. The dates move steadily from earlier to later, a small proof that some part of the world is in order. That feeling spreads through your chest, warm and steady, like the last trace of cocoa heat moving outward. After a time, a gentle thought rises. Soon, it will be time to really sleep, not just drift. And before that, it might feel good to clear the little table between you and your friend, returning this space to its clean, simple shape. Not because it has to be perfect, but because putting things away is its own tender way of saying the day is done. You lay your hands on the magazines again. The first one at the left feels familiar now, pages softened by your earlier sorting. You lift it, feeling its slight bend, the way the spine yields under your fingers. Instead of studying the date, you simply hold it for a breath, then slide it back into the seatback pocket. It slips in with a quiet whisper of paper against fabric. One by one, you repeat the motion. Lift, feel the weight, slide into place. Each issue disappears into the pocket in the same order you created earlier, but this time out of sight. The neatness is still there, just folded inward. The little stack inside the pocket rises gradually, its shape filling the space snugly. Your friend stirs beside you, eyes half open, watching your movements. Their hand appears near yours, palm up in a silent offer. You pass them the next magazine, and they tuck it carefully into the pocket with the others. No words are needed. The two of you move in a quiet rhythm. You pass, they place, the rail hum underscoring each small gesture. Soon the tray holds only two thin leaflets, side by side. You align them with a light tap of your fingertips, edges matching, and lay them on top of the magazines inside the pocket. They lean gently, supported by everything beneath. The pocket now feels less like a place where things were crammed and more like a small, orderly drawer. Your fingers stray to the folded napkin and empty cup. The napkin, once spread under the stir stick, is dry and soft. You fold it in half, then in half again, smoothing the edges into a neat square. It fits easily inside the cup, lining the bottom, hiding the faint circle of cocoa left behind. The cup itself feels almost weightless now, its job already done. You set it back in the holder, a simple little container of a finished moment. Your phone rests untouched near your knee. You pick it up just long enough to see the dark screen, then slip it fully into your bag, pushing it down until you hear it nestle against fabric and zippers. A lazy tug on the zipper closes that part of the world for the night. No alerts, no bright light, just the knowledge that it's there if you need it later, but it won't come looking for you. Your bag shifts a bit as you guide it farther under the seat in front of you with the side of your foot. The strap lies flat now, less likely to wander when the train leans. A small bottle of water stays within easy reach at the base of the seatback, but everything else, papers, electronics, spare layers, is tucked away, resting as thoroughly as you are. On the little ledge by your shoulder, the ticket stub still leans in its groove, pale against the darker wall. You leave it there. It feels right that it should remain visible, a tiny, patient marker watching the miles go by. Your eyes touch it for a moment, then move on, as if to say, "Stay, keep your quiet place. There's nothing more to ask of you tonight." The folded timetable stays where it is as well, nestled behind the pocket fabric. You rest your palm lightly against the outside of the seatback and feel its flat shape through the cloth. It has become part of the structure now, not a thing to handle, just a thin, steady presence that knows more about the route than you need to. When the tray is truly clear, you rest your hands on its smooth surface. The plastic is cool and faintly textured under your palms. Then you find the small latch underneath. Press it gently and let the table rise back toward the seat in front. It clicks into place with a soft, final sound, a small, satisfying note like the closing of a drawer at the end of the day. You reach up and touch the button for your reading light. The small circle above you dims to black, and the space around your seat softens. The only light now comes from the shared overhead strips and the dim glow of windows further down the car. Your reflection in the glass becomes less distinct, more like a vague outline floating over the dark outside. Your friend mirrors your movements in their own way. They slide their bag into a more secure corner by their feet, tug a sweatshirt into place as a pillow, and tuck a blanket or jacket over their lap. Their hands move slowly, with the unhurried care of someone preparing for sleep rather than for another activity. When they finish, their eyes meet yours briefly, and there's a shared sense of something completed. Inwardly, you say a quiet thank you to the seat that has taken your weight, to the small table that held your magazines and cup, to the pocket that now keeps your sorted papers, to the gentle lights that know how to step back without leaving you in darkness. You don't speak it aloud, but the gratitude is there, a warm layer in your chest. The car hums softly. The rails keep their steady, cushioned rhythm. The rain continues its patient tracing on the glass. With your belongings put away, your little corner of the night train feels simpler, lighter, like a room tidied before bed. You ease your back deeper into the seat, feeling it welcome you, and let your hands rest loosely in your lap, ready now for the next, slower part of the journey into sleep. The world beyond the window has settled into one long, dark flow, broken only by occasional distant lights and the soft shine of rain. Inside, with your things tucked away and the tray folded, your seat feels less like a chair and more like a narrow, waiting bed. The hum of the rails has become a lullaby, you no longer need to listen too closely. It's simply there, holding its note. You start at the ground, giving your body permission to release, piece by piece. Your feet press gently into the carpeted floor, toes stretching inside your shoes. After a moment, you loosen the laces or slip each foot free, letting your soles rest on the softer surface in just socks. The change is subtle but clear. The vibration of the rails becomes a muted presence, and your toes explore the gentler give of the fabric. Your calves relax next, no longer braced for walking or climbing stairs. Knees settle into a natural bend as you slide your legs forward a bit. The scarf or jacket over your lap becomes a makeshift blanket, covering your knees and the tops of your shins. Its weight is light, but it marks a line, a small boundary that tells your body, this is the warm, safe space where rest happens. You adjust the recline of your seat with a small motion of your hand. The back eases down a little further, supporting the curve of your spine more fully. You stop before it feels like lying flat, just enough so that your chest opens, your shoulders sink, and your head naturally wants to rest. The cushion behind you seems to reshape around this new angle, embracing the length of you like a shallow cradle. From a pocket, you draw a small travel pillow and fit it behind your neck, or use the built-in headrest to nestle the base of your skull. The fabric there is soft and smooth, warming quickly to match your skin. Your head finds a place where it can stay without effort. Chin tipped just enough so that your throat feels open and your jaw can hang comfortably loose. You bring your attention to your hands. They have done their tasks for the night, sorting, passing, stirring, folding. Now they rest, one on your stomach or chest, rising and falling with each breath, the other on your lap beneath the blanket of fabric. Fingers slacken, no longer curled around handles or edges. The absence of anything to hold becomes its own kind of comfort. Your friend has finished their own small preparations. Their seat reclines a little. Their sweatshirt or pillow supports their head. A blanket or jacket covers their knees. The distance between your shoulders narrows, and when the train leans into a gentle curve, you drift lightly against each other. The contact is feather soft and warm, a reassurance that someone else is traveling this same quiet stretch with you, just as intent on resting. As you close your eyes, the dim interior light filters through your lids, turning the world into a soft, reddish glow. You can still sense the occasional change outside a brighter moment as you pass a town, a darker one through a stand of trees, but none of it asks you to open your eyes. It all becomes part of the background that sleep will soon slip over. You take a breath in, a little deeper than the last one, and notice how easily the air fills your chest now that your posture is open. The temperature in the car is mild, neither warm nor cool enough to draw attention. Outside, the night air would be sharper, damp and close to the edge of frost. But in here, the climate holds steady, a soft, sheltered band between you and the weather. As you exhale, you imagine any remaining tension draining down, out through your back into the cushion, through your legs into the floor, through your shoulders into the seat. Your jaw loosens another fraction. The muscles around your eyes go slack. Your tongue rests heavily and comfortably in your mouth. All of the small places that clench without your noticing begin to let go. You feel the weight of your body more clearly now, but it isn't a burden. It's a sign that you're being carried. The rails below keep their softened rhythm click, hum, click, hum like a distant, reliable heartbeat belonging to the train itself. Sometimes the note deepens as you cross a bridge or curve along a hillside, then returns to its familiar tone. Each variation is gentle and rounded, like someone turning down the volume of the day one notch at a time. Inside your ears, the sounds blend, the rails murmur, the reins patter, the faint breath of air through vents, your friend's slow inhale and exhale. If you listen for them individually, you can find each one. If you relax your attention, they merge into a single, quiet presence, filling the space around you without crowding it. Thoughts still appear, but they move like leaves floating on slow water. A small image of the magazines in their pocket, a quick flash of the timetable, folded and resting, a glimpse of the ticket stub leaning in its groove, a memory of steam rising from the cup, of the first sip of cocoa. None of these stay long. They approach, drift by, and fade, leaving behind only a soft feeling of safety and completion. You let your awareness return to your breathing. In, out. The movement traces an easy path from your nose to your chest to your belly, then back again. You don't count. You don't control. You just notice, as if watching a tide that always returns on its own. Each exhale feels a little longer, a little smoother, like a line drawn with a careful, unhurried hand. The seat supports you fully now. There is no part of you that has to hold itself up. Your lower back is cradled. Your shoulders are cupped by the cushion. Your head is steadied by the pillow and the seat back, free from the work of balancing. Your legs are secure and warm beneath the cloth you've drawn over them. The car around you is a long, narrow dormitory of softly breathing shapes. Someone a few rows away shifts once and then grows still. A light near the far end clicks off, deepening the sense of night. The little clock above the door continues to change its digits in tiny, patient steps, but you don't look at it. Time is no longer something you have to manage. It will move whether you watch it or not. In this deep quiet, gratitude settles in as gently as dust in sunlight. Gratitude for the rails that hold firm beneath you, for the workers who guided the train onto this track, for the warm air and padded seats and dim lights, for the way a simple ride through the dark can become a place to lay everything down, for the familiar presence at your side, breathing with you in the same slow cadence. You float at the edge of sleep, wrapped in warmth and motion. Your final waking thoughts are soft and small, barely formed, carried, safe, enough. You take one more easy breath in and let it flow out in a long, quiet line, feeling the night train rock you gently as you begin to slip, without effort, into the deepest rest this journey has been preparing you for. You rest in the cradle of the seat, eyes closed, body heavy in the best way, while the train continues its quiet glide through the night. Somewhere between waking and sleep, the motion and the sounds begin to paint slow, simple images behind your eyelids. They don't arrive as full scenes, only as gentle impressions that drift in and out with the rhythm of the rails. You feel the car lean a little, and in your mind that tilt becomes a hillside of dark evergreens. Their trunks rise in close, steady lines, branches holding rain like beads of glass. Low clouds hang among them, thick but not oppressive, just drifting through the tops of the trees. Beneath, a narrow river runs alongside the tracks, its surface a dark ribbon that picks up scattered reflections from distant porch lights and the soft glow of the train's own windows. The rails hum at the edge of the water, tracing its course in sound. The image dissolves without hurry, giving way to another. Now you sense open stretches where fields lie flat and glistening under the rain. Fences run in long, straight lines, their posts dark and damp. A barn sits back from the tracks, roof shining faintly, a single window casting a square of warm light onto the wet ground. A pickup truck rests beside it, drops of water shimmering on its hood. As the train passes, the barn and the yard stay perfectly still. Inside the car, the imagery shrinks down to the small things near you. In your mind's eye, you can see the magazines tucked neatly back into the pocket, their spines aligned in the order you gave them. Even in darkness, the row holds its shape, a tiny library at rest. The pocket itself feels like a little shelf built into the night, keeping its small archive safe and still while you sleep. Behind that pocket, you remember the folded timetable, its creases softened slightly by the warmth of the car. In your drifting thoughts, it's no longer a grid of times and names you might read. It becomes a simple, glowing line, marked with tiny points of light where each town lies. The line stretches from where you boarded to where you'll step off, but it's dim now, background only, a quiet assurance that the path exists even when you're not watching. The train crosses something unseen, and the sound beneath you deepens for a few breaths. That shift turns into another image, a broad span over dark water, maybe a river or an inlet, its surface ruffled by the wind. Reflections of scattered building lights sketch wavy columns on the water, breaking and reforming as the surface moves. The bridge itself is only a suggestion, a sense of height, a temporary openness beneath you before the rails return to solid ground and the sound gentles again. The windows on the other side of the car catch your attention without opening your eyes. You picture them as a soft string of rectangles glowing in the dark, like a moving necklace of light. Behind each one, you imagine another person resting in their own small arrangement of blanket, pillow, and thoughts. You don't see faces or details, only shapes turned toward sleep, all being carried along the same line, each with their own quiet reasons for being here. Your awareness drifts back toward the little ledge by your shoulder. You can feel, without looking, that the ticket stub is still there. In your half-dream, it has changed in the gentlest way. Earlier it stood upright, edges firm, the printed date clear and deliberate. Now you picture it leaning more fully back against the wall, as if it has relaxed along with you. The paper seems softer, warmed by the air of the car, the ink a shade lighter in your memory, like handwriting that has begun to fade on a much-read note. There's a sense, too, that the timetable and the stub are aware of each other now, like two small companions tucked into different corners of the same room. One rests in the pocket, folded and flat, holding the whole route in quiet lines. The other leans on the ledge, bearing the mark of this particular night's passage. They don't need anything from you anymore. They've done their part, gotten you settled into your seat, confirmed that you belong here. Now they simply keep their positions, gentle witnesses to the miles sliding by. Outside, another cycle of imagery forms. Hills rise and fall in slow, dark waves. Clusters of houses appear on slopes, their windows glowing like low stars through the rain. A road crossing flashes red as you approach. Bells faint and distant, then slips behind you, leaving only the steady brush of the storm and the softened click of the rails. The night feels wide and deep, but the train makes a narrow, safe path through it, and you ride that path without effort. Inside, your own small interior landscape matches that simplicity. Seat, blanket, pillow, the steady presence of your friend beside you. The sorted magazines resting out of sight. The folded timetable dozing in its pocket. The ticket stub leaning back in its groove, no longer a sharp token of departure, but a relaxed little marker that has come this far with you and is as ready to rest as you are. The images grow quieter. Trees become simple shadows. Lights become soft blurs. Paper becomes just paper, warm, patient, content to stay where it is. The rails keep their lullaby, the rain keeps its soft, endless lines, and you drift deeper, carried through this nocturne of moving shapes and gentle anchors toward the still center of sleep. Now your body is almost weightless in the cradle of the seat, even as it feels securely held. Warmth gathers along your legs beneath the fabric you've drawn over them, at the curve of your back where cushion meets spine, at the base of your neck where pillow and headrest offer silent support. Your hands rest without purpose, one rising and falling with your breath, the other, quiet, at your side. Beside you, your friend's breathing has settled into a slow, even rhythm. Every so often, as the train leans, your shoulders touch, a faint, steady line of shared warmth. No words are needed, no glances exchanged. Presence alone is enough, a soft assurance that someone else is sleeping their way through this same gentle motion. In the pocket ahead, the folded timetable lies still, its creases relaxed, the tiny numbers and station names resting in perfect order. On the little ledge by your shoulder, the ticket stub leans back, edges cooled by the night air of the car, no longer announcing where you started, simply keeping quiet company as the miles pass. These small anchors have traveled with you through the evening, and now they, too, feel at rest. You notice your breath one more time. In, out. The air is mild and easy, filling your chest without effort, leaving again in a soft, unbroken stream. Each exhale carries a little more of the day away, its weight, its noise, its edges, until there is only this: warmth, motion, darkness, and the steady song of the rails. A quiet gratitude settles in your chest, gentle and full. Gratitude for this moving room, for the soft seat and shared silence, for the rain that smooths the world outside, for the simple kindness of being carried through the night while you let go. You don't have to think anymore. You don't have to track time or distance. The train knows the way. The paper holds the route. Your only work is to rest. You breathe in once more and let the breath leave you in a long, easy sigh, sinking deeper into the cushion, into the warmth, into the hush. as the night train glides on through the rain-dark evergreens, you drift past the last edge of waking, carried forward on that soft, unhurried exhale into deep, untroubled sleep.